Hey friends, welcome back to the Weather Farm. We've got a lot to cover today because a very dangerous pattern that has been building over the last week is setting up across the U.S. this week. We're talking widespread heat alerts, dangerous storms with damaging winds and tornado potential, and then yes, a change in the weather pattern may be on the horizon. We have numerous heat advisories across the United States, and they're stretching all the way from Minnesota down through Texas and Louisiana, across the southern states, even into Florida, where yesterday, Tampa, you hit 100 degrees for the first time ever. And those heat advisories also extend up the East Coast into parts of Virginia. But we can't forget our friends up in the New England area, in New York City, Connecticut, Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire. You are all under the gun for excessive heat advisories on our Monday. And let's just look at these numbers because temperatures are running 10 to 20 degrees above their seasonal norms, with some areas threatening to break all-time July high temperature records. We see 100s from the Dakotas down through the Central Plains, near 100 for Dallas. As we go along the coast, we have 104, 106 for Jacksonville. If we get that hot, that is going to be close to an all-time record. Low 100s across Georgia, up the East Coast. Richmond, you could be at 97. We're going to see upper 90s into New England, across parts of Connecticut, out into eastern Massachusetts near Boston. It is definitely going to be a warm Monday, and this pattern continues on Tuesday as we could be approaching triple digits here across parts of Connecticut and along the East Coast. 103 in southern Georgia. We are cooling off a little bit across Florida, but we're getting a little bit warmer across parts of Texas. 103 for Houston, 106 for Dallas, hundreds from, again, Nebraska through Kansas as we begin our Tuesday. And then all we have to do is add in the humidity, and those heat indices are going to be 115 plus across most areas, and we even are starting to warm up back out across the desert. And what's fueling all of this? At the 500 millibar level, the story becomes clear. We have a dominant high-pressure ridge planted over the central United States that's pumping in dry, sinking air that fuels both heat and stability. But look out west. We see a dip in that jet stream, a developing trough, and that's going to be the key to what happens next as we get this ridge continuing to push towards the west. By the time we get to Tuesday night into Wednesday, we watch that trough continue to build on the shore of California. It's going to come up into the Rockies by the time we get to Wednesday afternoon. But first, before we get there, we are watching the threat of severe weather across the northern plains. We have our enhanced risk for parts of eastern South Dakota into Minnesota, even far western extremes of Wisconsin. But elsewhere, we have a slight risk for severe weather on our Monday and a marginal risk across the northern tier. This has been the focus over the last 24 hours of severe weather and strong storms across this part of the country. In fact, as we look at our threat map, we already have a 5% chance of tornadoes across eastern South Dakota and Minnesota. Could this increase to a 10% chance? It is quite possible. We could even see a hatched area of significant tornado risk across this area for our Monday. But we're also watching significant hail. Hail of 1 to 2 inches is likely just to the west of Minneapolis. We have a 30% chance of strong winds as those storms move out of North Dakota and southeast into Minnesota and South Dakota. We could see winds 60, 70, possibly 80 miles per hour. This is going to be a developing situation on our Monday. Make sure you have a way to get those weather alerts. Stay tuned to your local meteorologist because this could be a very dangerous situation Monday into our Tuesday. Right now, our Tuesday doesn't look that threatening, but we do have a widespread marginal area from Montana through Wyoming, Nebraska to Iowa. We do believe it is this area in southeastern South Dakota, northeastern Nebraska into Iowa that we're going to have to really watch for our Tuesday. Now, we'll see what the next update of the Storm Prediction Center, their modeling tells us, but we would expect this to go into a slight, if not an enhanced risk by the time we get to Tuesday morning. It is going to be similar threats, damaging winds, possibility of tornadoes, and hail are going to be your primary components with this system. Let's watch these storms as they develop on our Monday morning. We're at 10 a.m. as the storms are beginning to make their way out of Montana into North Dakota, a very strong, powerful line. If this stays line or if it breaks apart into discrete cells, that's going to increase the storm potential. But as they move into South Dakota, this is where we really get worried. We're watching stronger storms continue to build as they make their way into Minnesota. Strong winds, tornadoes, hail are all possible as they make their way Monday afternoon into Monday evening, and then they dive southeast, and we start to watch across the northern plains as we begin our Tuesday for yet another round of storms to come out of Saskatchewan down into North Dakota. We're also watching this area across Iowa. Now, the HRRR doesn't go out quite that far yet, but we are going to watch this system as it moves across North Dakota for its potential of severe weather. And as we get to the afternoon heating, we're going to watch this area here for severe development. We start to see it across Nebraska by the time we get to Tuesday afternoon, even into South Dakota, and now making its way towards Iowa. But again, as the HRRR, we get more model runs in, we will continue to refine this and we'll bring you the latest at the weather farm. In terms of our significant tornado parameter, our best chance is across western South Dakota on Monday. But as we go through the afternoon, we start to see those yellows and those reds pop. And it is anywhere between 5 and 8 p.m. that we could see tornadoes making their way through eastern South Dakota, through Minnesota, down towards Iowa. The Twin Cities, you stay out of the significant risk for tornadoes, but anything in this area could spin up a tornado because we have a lot of vorticity in the atmosphere. We have a lot of instability and high Cape values. The big thing with these storms is if they remain discrete individual cells, that tornado risk is going to increase significantly. If the storms do evolve into a squall line, damaging winds, localized flooding from training storms could be our dominant headline. And then as we look across the Central Plains, we're seeing the core of that heat here across Oklahoma into Texas. And what we're going to see for the next 48 hours is we're going to see storms right up and around this ring of fire pattern through New Mexico into Colorado, diving out of Missouri down through Arkansas into Louisiana. Texas and Oklahoma, you're going to remain very dry over the next 48 hours, but those storms are going to fire on the periphery of that hot dome. And we see a pattern change beginning to develop. By Wednesday and Thursday, we start to see this northwesterly flow. The blocking high that's been across the south and southeast, it starts to move to the west. It starts to weaken a little bit, and that allows that cooler Canadian air to start to surge south through the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, and even into the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. And as we get through Wednesday into Thursday, those above normal temperatures are going to be pushed down to the south and out west, and we're going to see cooler air make its way into the upper Great Lakes, even the Ohio Valley towards the Mid-Atlantic. This is going to provide several days of below normal temperatures across this part of the country. Even as we go into Saturday, we see much below normal temperatures across parts of Nebraska into Kansas. Be careful, that's going to be short-lived, and we're going to get to that here just in a minute. Because by the time we get to early next week, we see yet another trough making its way through the Great Lakes in Ohio Valley. But look, there's that ridge out west, so the deserts, you are definitely warming up. But as we close out next weekend, that ridge starts to build back towards the east as we get to the 8th, 9th, the 10th of August. So that can create a much stormier pattern across the upper Great Lakes into the Ohio Valley as we have the cooler air clashing with the warmer air that's moving into that area. So stay tuned. It's still almost 2 weeks away. A lot can change over the next several days. In fact, as we look toward that time period, toward the first full week of August, we are seeing most of the country experiencing above normal temperatures to begin our month of August. In terms of our precipitation, with that change in the pattern, with that ridge out west, that northwesterly flow, we're going to get more storms, more precipitation across the northern half of the United States into the Ohio Valley, making its way down into the Tennessee Valley. And then we're going to watch along the Gulf. There could be a possibility of some tropical weather as we get towards the 8th, 9th, and 10th. Some models are starting to hint at a possibility. I will tell you that there's only about 2 or 3 models that are even hinting at anything during this time period. So this is still to be determined. This probably has a low confidence at this time, but we will continue to watch that. On our Monday, we are watching dangerous heat indices 110 from the northern plains down to the Gulf, back through Georgia and up the East Coast. We don't see much in the way of relief by the time we get to our Tuesday, with still the core of the high heat indices in this general Central Plains area down towards Louisiana. In fact, our high temperatures on our Wednesday, that's when we begin to start to see that cooler air making its way south. Instead of triple digits across parts of Nebraska, we are going to see 70s and 80s. 60s could be part of your Wednesday afternoon across parts of Wisconsin. The heat is still into the northeast and down the East Coast. That's going to stay there for a while. And we still squish that heat down into Texas, into Oklahoma, and we start to push it out west, where we start to see triple digits, 105 to 150 across the deserts, and even out into parts of southern Idaho. We're seeing temperatures approaching triple digits for your Wednesday. As we go into Thursday, that cooler air continues to make its way further south, now reaching Kansas into Missouri. We're keeping the hot temperatures across parts of Texas. This model may still want to overdo it just a little bit. I think we'll be in the low 100s across most of eastern Texas for our Thursday. But that heat continues to build out west. And as we go into our Friday, we start to see the East Coast starting to cool down, even down into the Tennessee Valley, down into northern Georgia, the Carolinas, into the Northeast. Highs here in the 60s and 70s, but we're already starting to see that heat beginning to rebound across parts of Montana, 80s and 90s, 80s and 90s across most of the Canadian provinces for your Friday. And as we go into Saturday, that heat continues to build to the north as the cooler air is in the eastern third of the United States through the Ohio, Tennessee Valley. We could have highs in the mid-70s for Saturday across parts of Georgia and South Carolina. And as we go into our Sunday, that heat begins to build back towards the Central Plains. We're starting to see 80s and 90s, even some near triple digits across the panhandle of Texas, across the Gulf Coast, Florida, where you've seen those triple digits, you're now in the 80s. But out across in the desert, it's 110 to 120 for your Sunday. Well, here at the Weather Farm, we're going to be tracking these severe weather threats very closely, especially as we go Monday into Tuesday. If you're in those risk zones, stay weather aware, charge your devices, have a safety plan. Don't forget to subscribe to the Weather Farm for all your updates all week long, especially if this early August pattern shift comes to focus. We will bring you the latest on any changes in our Wednesday forecast. Have a great day.